Hello and welcome to Scan TV's show called Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whitman, and our show provides caregivers with information and resources for caregiving, including topics such as legal issues, health insurance, physical wellness, nutrition, and other timely topics. Our first guest today is Mary Valis, who is the founder of Your Sparkling Potential. Mary, welcome to Caregivers First.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you for having me here today. It's great to be on Caregivers First.
You're welcome. So first of all, tell us about Your Sparkling Potential. What is the company all about?
So my company is comprised of 3 different components. One of the biggest parts of it is my life enrichment coaching, where I work with a variety of individuals or groups. I also do dementia consultation training and coaching, as well as public speaking engagements.
Wonderful. So how long have you been doing this for? How long has the company been?
The company itself has only been in existence for about a year.
Okay.
So I'm celebrating my first year.
Congratulations.
As I'm growing and building, but I've been doing this type of work for over 30 years.
Wow. So you're really involved in this world with caregivers and dementia and everything.
I'm a caregiver myself.
Right.
I volunteer as a caregiver as well. And I've worked with caregivers with chronic illness and mostly Alzheimer's disease and different forms of dementia for many, many years.
Wonderful. So I think a lot of people aren't familiar with what life coaches are, and myself included. Can you just talk a little bit about what that means? Why would somebody see a life coach?
Okay. Generally, when people know there's a better life out there for them, but they're not sure how to go about getting to it, they'll engage with a life coach. So a life coach is really someone who is going to ask those powerful, thought-provoking questions that's going to help lead them to the path they want to be on. At times people aren't sure what path that is, they just know there's something better. Sometimes they have an idea of what their path is, but they don't know how to get to it. And sometimes during the process and discovery, they think they want one thing, but it's really something else that they're seeking. So I just help assist in that process.
That's great. So we're talking to caregivers. That's who this show is focused on. So as a caregiver, what sort of people have you coached through, or what sort of issues do caregivers come to you with specifically?
Caregivers are amazing people. First of all, they think that because they're caring for a loved one, whether it's a mom or a dad or a family member or a spouse, that it's their job to do it. And not all people can step up to the plate and take on that type of activity. So I think all caregivers first need to recognize that and celebrate it, like really pat themselves on the back. A lot of times caregivers are overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they start to feel some anger and bitterness towards others who aren't stepping up to the plate. Because they are taking on the responsibility and getting it done. Others may sit back a little and just wait to be asked, or figure, hey, they have it under control, and so everything's good. Let's just leave it as it is. And that caregiver is just working away, often in the sandwich generation, where they're taking care of their own children yet, even if they're grown children, and their parents as well. So they really just are taking on a lot. A lot of what caregivers eventually come to me for is because they're living with so many negative feelings, so many feelings that develop into bitterness and anger against people they love. They don't know how to handle it, they don't know how to release it and how to let it go or control it. So that's something we work on together as we partner in the process.
Wow. So tell me, because that sounds amazing, and being a caregiver myself, I could totally relate to that 100%. So if I was experiencing those feelings of bitterness or anger or resentment, why would I go to a life coach versus a therapist? What would my thinking be for that?
I'm not a therapist,
Right.
And sometimes people may think a life coach is a non-licensed therapist, and that is the worst portrayal for a life coach to give anyone. Therapists not often, they are, whether they're called counselors or psychotherapists, they are in the healthcare field, they are licensed practitioners, where a health coach is not. Currently in the state of New Jersey, you don't have to be certified. So you want to look out for that if you're looking for a life coach, one who is certified over one who is not. And so, you would come to a life coach when you're looking for a process to help you with what's happening right now and what path do you need to be on to move forward with this behavior change. Whereas when you see a psychotherapist or a therapist, they may delve into the past to discover why things are the way they are currently. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
Right. So then at the end, so let's say I went to a therapist versus a life coach, and I said, I'm caring for my mom. She's making me crazy, having problems with my husband. It's just really, I'm struggling. So at the end of the time with a therapist, the outcome, how would would the outcome be different going to a therapist versus a life coach, or is the process to get there different?
I believe it's the process to get there. And again, I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to say the wrong thing about what therapists do, because I've never been engaged with one.
Right.
They are very helpful to many people, and especially I think a therapist more someone's looking for a diagnosis, and then to delve into the past and what's currently happening.
Right.
With the life coach, you're looking at what's happening now, and discovering where you want to be and how to get on the road to get there. It's very important for a good life coach not to give you the answer. When I work with people, I may know what I want to tell them to do, but for caregivers, let's face it, they are busy people. And even though you might be giving them good advice and something solid, you're just giving them one more thing to do. And they're going to go home, and even with the best intentions, they're going to put it on the stack of everything else they have to do. And then it tends to get buried and not done. So it's very important for a life coach to be a partner, to ask those engaging questions so that person is the voice of the need for the change. And then they're more apt to go ahead and take the steps necessary when you come up with that plan and that goal together.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about the process. I call you. Hi, Mary. I heard about you. I love you.
I say thank you.
Yeah, you're so highly recommended. I'm having this issue. So tell me about the process. Do you talk to me over the phone first? Do we meet in person? How does it work?
So with your Sparkling Potential, my life coaching business, what I like to do is have the person first dedicate some me time where they can sit quietly without the kids tugging on them or work interrupting them, that they can think and engage in a process with me. It's usually a free consultation that takes about 30 minutes to an hour. I tend to take the hour because I really want to get to know that person. I want them to get to know me. Even if I'm highly recommended, we all have different personalities. We're all unique, and so you want to really work with somebody you feel a connection to, that you think you can partner well with, and that you're going to be open and honest with. So we have our free consultation. I do it in a variety of methods. Certainly if they're in the area and they want to meet for that, meet for coffee or meet somewhere quiet, we can do that and meet in person. A lot of people are comfortable over the phone. So it's really, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's whatever works for that individual. So I do that both ways. And then as the process starts, we tend to do more of our engagement over the telephone. Again, finding that protected me time that they can, think and do their life work that I give them. It's like homework, but it's important. And just really engage in that process. And so the process I use with my certification through Elite Life Coaching is called the scientific method. So just like in science, where we make a discovery, we want to put together we hypothesize, we want to remember why we're doing it, then we want to experiment, and then depending on how the experiment goes, we're going to evaluate it and maybe adjust it. So sometimes people think if things don't go the way they want it to at first, that it's a failure. And the last thing any caregiver needs is to feel more failure, because they're already doing so much and feeling like it's never enough and it's never good enough. So we just make sure that they remember, even in a failed experiment, it's still a success because you know you need to tweak it and maybe go down a different road a little bit. Right. So we celebrate the small successes always. You know, we forget about how important that is.
Yeah. And do you find that somebody will come to you with something that they think is the issue? Like their mother's feeding their dog under the table or something like that, something that they think is the issue. Yeah. And then throughout this process of homework and discovery, it really turns out to be something else. Is that something that happens often?
I would say almost every time.
Every time?
Yeah. Sometimes it's that one last minuscule thing that that's it. I can't take anymore. Yeah. And everybody's feeling like they're out of control. They have no way to respond to things in a manner that's conducive to getting on the path because of the frustration level. And so when we sit down and make this discovery and remember our why, because we have to know why we're doing this, that's so important, and why to remember that.
Why we're coaching.
Why we're in the process. The person who's coming for the life coaching, it's not just because they have extra money they want to spend. You know, generally they want something specific. There's a reason why. Maybe they want a healthier lifestyle, more positive outlook. They don't want to yell at their mom who they're caring for. And so in this discovery, we do find that this isn't really the issue in whole. It's just led up to it. And when you peel back the layers, it really starts, you know, at a much deeper base.
Yeah. Do people have to have, or how important is it to have the support of a spouse that you're doing this? Or is it, because I imagine some spouses are like, what do you do? You know, this is, don't do this or whatever. Is it just as successful if you feel it in your heart that it's important?
It really is, Lynette, because as much as we want our spouses to always be there and be that guiding light for us and be standing, you know, beside us to help, when it comes with the territory of caregiving and everybody has their busy life, maybe they're still working, again, with the children, whether they're grown or young, the parents, especially if it's not the spouse's parent, but an in-law, there's a lot put on their plate. And often that, you know, for example, if a wife is caring for her mom in the home, then the husband starts to feel neglected because a lot of that attention and energy after a long day's work, or whether you're going to a job or you're working with your tasks at home, you're tired, you know, you're exhausted at the end of the day, and your relationship changes. So the process is still great, even without the support, because we teach people how to support themselves, how to embrace what they need, discover what they need, and get on that path where they have control of that.
Yeah, I think it's so, it sounds like it's so important for older people to take advantage of this, because when you're younger, when you're in high school and you're going to college, you go to guidance counselors, or you take those little tests to see what your career path might be, and so there's a path for you that's laid out. But once you get older and either it's caregiving, or you're thinking about retiring, or your kids go to college and you're empty nesters for the first time, there's nobody that calls you up and says, this is the path you might want to take. And so you're just on your own. You're talking to your friends, but it's tough.
Lynette, this is a big thing that people come to me for, because we are so identified by our roles in relationships, and when, you know, you're busy being super mom and then your kids don't need you anymore and they're off at college or off with their own life, or you
need to hold that thought. I love this. We're going to be right back, and then we'll be right back, and then we're going to talk about how to get through that next stage of life.
You probably already know that rehabilitation is a must for successful recovery from surgery, injury, or serious illness. What you may not know is that you're free to choose where you go for rehab. In Monmouth and Ocean County, the compelling choice is Care One. Where you choose to go for rehab matters, and with Care One, you have 4 convenient locations to choose from in Monmouth and Ocean counties. Care One at Jackson, Care One at Wall, Care One at Homedale, and Care One at King James in the Atlantic Highlands. At Care One, you'll work with a team of experts to develop a plan based on your needs and goals. You'll have the full support of caring, compassionate physicians, RNs, licensed therapists, and nutritionists dedicated to helping you recover successfully, without setbacks, at a pace that makes you comfortable and successful in meeting your rehabilitation goals. Once you take the first step with us, you'll never look back. Call 877-99-CARE-1 today and come for a tour.
Welcome back to Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whitman, and I'm joined today by Mary Valis, who is the founder of Your Sparkling Potential. Mary, before the break, we were talking about how older people transitioning in life, either empty nest or thinking about retiring, or don't really have any sort of roadmap to follow. You're sort of on your own. So do you see a lot of people in that stage of their life just sort of figuring out what's next, or who am I now?
I do see a lot of people that struggle with that, because as I was saying, we're defined by our roles in our relationship, and when that changes, we kind of lose a sense of who we are. Yes. As we start to age, we I think by nature sometimes identify or compare ourselves to a younger version of ourselves or younger people. Just in the past 2 weeks, I was speaking with a caregiver who is 64, and she cares for her mother, but she's also always been a very active, physically active person. So she joined a basketball team for gals over the age of 60, and they were playing against some 30-year-olds, and she started to think, gosh, I used to move a lot faster, I used to be more agile, and we start to beat ourselves up over not being as good as people half our age. So I think it really is important to identify who we are and where we're going, especially when we lose that role of super mom or super employee. Sometimes the worst thing that we see happen is people kind of just sit back and don't take charge of anything and start to decline as a result. So it's so important to grab hold of that, get engaged in something. Volunteering is a great way to give back, and move forward in life to feel, have a reason to get up and a sense of belonging, to feel good about yourself.
Is there particular like rough times, like a year after you retire, or that year when your kids go to school? Is there certain times in life that people really struggle to find their footing? And how do you help them through that? What's the process to help them?
Lynette, that's a great question, and it really depends on the individual and how involved they are in other things, or if they're involved with anything else. If they have friends they go out with, if they have family they get together with, if they have their own hobbies. Sometimes they tend to see it's right away when the adjustment is needed, or they may take a few weeks or months and be enjoying things that they haven't had the opportunity to, but then once that kind of dies down a little bit, then they find themselves sitting with their thoughts and not knowing where to go or what to do. So it really does depend on the individual. For me, it's just so important to spend that time getting to know the person, to know what their process will look like, because it really is unique to every individual.
So if somebody's thinking about, let's say, retiring within the next 2 years or 3 years, or is there something that you tell people, start doing this now, start doing this before that last day and you shut the door and you're not coming back and you're not that person anymore? What can you do to prepare for that?
I think it's just important to really reflect on who you are, what's important to you, and what goals you have or may want to have for that next stage of your life. I like to do this exercise where I have a timeline, and we kind of jot down the things that we did and that were important to us, different roles, different activities in our first 25 years, and then the next years to 50, and then beyond that, even if the person isn't you know, beyond that yet. You know, I think by the time I'm 75, I want to be a grandma. I want to have, you know, an award-winning book published. So it's nice to think ahead also, but reflect where you're coming from and start to think about where you want to go. So you're gradually introducing that, and it's not a bam, you're cut off from this, and now you're starting something that seems like a big effort, and it's hard to get it started. So definitely to start looking at what your life might look like, what you might want it to look like. And of course, to always keep in mind, you have to be flexible. I mean, we make these great plans, but then life comes and gets involved and we have to adjust.
Right. You think when most people call you to see the life coach, are they nervous about it, do you think? Are they scared what is going to be discovered, or like are most people nervous or excited, or what do you find?
It's a little of both, just like this program today. I was very excited and very nervous at the same time. It really is. People are, you know, we get so complacent. Even if we know things aren't great, we know what to expect. And there's comfort in that. When we shake things up and we look deep within, especially when we get to the center, you know, the middle of the process, it can be scary because we may learn things about ourselves that we never realized, or we might not like, and we know we have to do something about it. But, you know, when we talk with our friends, they're very agreeing, you know, in our family, or they're like, oh, you're nuts, forget about that. So when you're talking with a life coach as a partner, they're going to be truthful with you in a loving way. Sometimes you know who you have to give that little hard push to and who you can step back a little bit with. But you explore and discover things that you maybe weren't forced to look at before. So definitely there's nervousness and excitement.
Have you learned stuff about yourself through doing this that you didn't expect that you would think about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely have. Not that I make it about me, but you know, sometimes when we're discovering, it's like that eureka moment where a light bulb goes off and you can identify with, you know, a lot of things. I'm in the sandwich generation, so I can identify with the folks who are taking care of children and adults. And, you know, I think of that, well, I'm rounding the second part of my career and should be thinking of retirement, although I love work, so I never will retire, but I can identify with those folks. So it's really easy to put myself in the shoes of other people. And so, yeah, I learn something about myself all the time. Even when I work with people who have dementia, it's amazing how much they teach me, you know, in the process.
Is there one person who you've helped or coached or through your dementia work that's really stuck out for you? Is there a story that stays with you?
Yeah, I could give you a lot of stories, but recently I was working with someone. She is a mother of 3. Well, she's a mother of 4, but she is one of 3 siblings. And so she had been caring for her mom, who was living independently. And because she lived close, she was the girl in the family who lived closest to mom, she would, you know, check in, make phone calls, you know, be involved in, you know, in that realm with the caretaking. But then mom fell, had an injury, and mom moved in with them. And so she was, you know, really there taking care of mom physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially. She has a sister that lives out of state, and she has a brother that lives nearby, but doesn't always step up to the plate. So in her caretaking, and of course when you get started, you know, you want to love and care for your mom, of course, but it gets harder and harder because she's still working, still involved with her own children, and it's easy to then have those feelings of resentment and bitterness that people aren't helping enough. And you know, she'd say, I know I love them. I know they love their mom. I know they would help if I asked them, but sometimes asking is frustrating, and you don't want to have to do that. You want people just to recognize, like, gosh, you could use a night off. Why don't I take mom out tonight, or why don't I come and spend time with mom, and you go take the night off? So during our discovery process, I asked her a question, and I can remember vividly the question being, you know, if you can take hold of these negative feelings and change them, how do you think that would look to your children? And she just stopped. You know, we were on the telephone, but I could see her.
Yeah.
And it was just this eureka moment, and she just started crying. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to make you cry. You know, but she thought, you know, yeah, what I do, my children see.
Yes.
And that's going to reflect back to how they view me when I get older and maybe need the help, or heavens forbid, I have this disease as I age, because that's another thing caretakers think of. They're not just exhausted taking care of their loved one. I know in their mind somewhere they're thinking, is this going to happen to me? And it's a very real and scary thing. So that was one of my, you know, my favorite, most successful, because she just, you know, decided from that point on, I need to let go of this bitterness. I need to let go of this resentment and anger, and I need to find a way to make it work in all of our favor, so my children will see, you know, the way the process should work.
Isn't that great when like one question could just flip your brain and the way you think of things, and your friends wouldn't have said that. None of her friends. They probably are like, oh, your siblings, you should ask them that you.
Definitely.
So you know, it took an outside person who's trained in this to flip that for her.
Because our friends and family, everybody's always telling us what to do, and you just think, I just want to be the boss of myself. You know, stop telling me everything. And a lot of times it's good advice, but it's unsolicited advice. And especially with families, in my own experiences, and certainly with many people that I talk with, they have those out-of-state family members, or those family members that aren't engaged, who say, you know what you should make mom do? And it's like, really? I should make mom eat with a fork. She shouldn't eat spaghetti with her fingers. And it's like, why did I think of that? And you know, after a while, it's just so frustrating. And so, you know, I give them this mantra that I tell them to say, whether they say it to their loved ones or friends or themselves, I don't want to be evaluated, or I don't need to be evaluated. I want to be validated. We just want someone to say, thank you. I know you're doing the best job you can with what you have and what you know. Because caregivers always feel like when people give this advice that they're not good enough. They're not fast enough. It's always not. It's all this negativity. A big thing we work with is this negative self-talk. You know, we put those words out into the universe, and then we start prophesizing them. We start making them come true.
Manifest.
So it's, you know, it's an important thing.
So I'm going to carry you wherever I go. So you can do
you're going to need a back brace.
So thank you. So Mary, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to learn more about your process, then we're going to have your telephone number. And I know you're on Facebook. I know your Sparkling Potential has a great Facebook page.
Thank you.
So people are going to be able to get in touch with you.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think you gave great advice. Again, I think it's a world people don't know about, life enrichment coaching, but I think pretty much everybody, from caregivers to retired people to people whose kids just left and they're like, what am I now? Could just use a little of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for joining us today for Caregivers First. What we really want to do is hear from you. I know there's caregivers out there, and I know you all have issues, and I know there's things that you wonder about. Maybe there's questions that you have that you're afraid to ask somebody. So we really want to hear from you. What's your concerns, and what sort of guests and topics that you want to hear? So please give us a call. The number that you could call in is to the SCAN office. It's 732-542-1326. And if you want to email a question, you could email it directly to me. Again, my name is Lynette Whitman, and I am the Executive Director of Caregiver Volunteers of Central Jersey. And you could email me at Lynette, Lynettew, at Caregiver Volunteers, caregiver is singular, volunteers is plural, .com. And I would love to hear from you. Just give us some feedback about our show, and again, what you would like to hear in the future. So I really hope this was helpful for you today. And Mary, is there any final advice, quick advice that you want to give to people?
I would love to tell caregivers that give yourself permission to not be perfect. You know, just celebrate everything that you do, because every little thing is a small win.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I just love when you say it again, you want to be not evaluated.
I don't need to be evaluated. I want to be validated.
Can you put that on a t-shirt for people?
It is going to be the title of my book,
okay.
which is not ready yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you for
Mary.
having me.
Okay.